Let's talk to James Heale, political correspondent at The Spectator. James, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So, the big story, I suppose, of the morning, front page of the Telegraph and the Times, is reform. A YouGov poll showing them to be, as Nigel Farage puts it, the opposition.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the narrative they're seizing on this weekend. I think this point was known as crossover point, was long forecast. We thought it would happen some point this week on the aftermath of the D-Day debacle. What I'm picking up as a result of it is not right now the kind of Tory panic yet, where lots of people are briefing against the Prime Minister. But what I am detecting is a sense perhaps that the narrative has changed. We saw it last night. That poll dropped very handily just before the ITV debate. And as a result of that, Farage could plausibly claim for once, for the first time, if the vote for the Conservatives, that's splitting the anti-Labour vote. We're ahead of the Conservatives. Reform is now the opposition.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think they are technically the opposition party, and this is just one poll, of course, but it does change the narrative, and suddenly you get what we saw 30 years ago in Canada, which was the main Conservative Party slipping behind Reform as an opposition. So it's a big moment, a big warning sign, and I can't recall ever Conservatives in the post-war era being third at this point in an election cycle in a general election.
No, indeed. I spoke to Richard Tice about an hour ago, and I asked him the question, now that Nigel Farage considers himself to be the main opposition to the Labour Party, will he be seeking a debate with Sir Keir Starmer? To which the answer was absolutely, we will be asking for that. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether any of the main broadcasting outlets decide to do that.
And I'm also fascinated by Starmer's calculation here. On the one hand, I can see why he wouldn't want to do a debate with Farage. Farage is probably the best debater of his generation. He might be concerned about those kind of red wall votes. Right. But equally, if you think about it, Labour would be, I think, very cynical and calculating and clever if they made it a two-way contest between them and Farage and kind of really squeeze Rishi Sunak's vote even more. So there's a question perhaps of should they do that, should they not do that? But I think that Farage has every right to ask for that at this point in the cycle.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know if you were able to watch the debate last night. Many people didn't bother, but so we're going to try and bring them all the best highlights from it. There weren't too many, it has to be said. But let's have a look at the Green Party here. Here they are accusing Labour of doing U-turns.
To Angela Rayner. Angela, which of your party's U-turns are you most proud of? The ditching of the £28 billion climate investment plan, keeping the cruel two-child benefit cap, or one of the others?
What I'm not proud of is that we've had 14 years of the Tories and the crashing of the economy. But what I am realistic about is we've got to have a programme for government which is credible, that can grow our economy so we can invest in our green prosperity plan and so that we can eradicate poverty. And I know Labour can do it because we've done it before and we'll do it again.
Don't really feel like that answered my question.
Well, I did. I felt it did answer the question.
What do you think,
you can't just keep plucking numbers out and say, well, this is what we'll do, because that's what the Tories
That's what a
did.
manifesto is, fully costed one.
Well, yours wasn't fully costed.
Yes, it was.
The Conservatives unfunded tax breaks, and that's when Liz Truss crashed our economy. We have a fully funded, fully costed manifesto, which has a growth strategy.
There was a lot of shrieking and shouting, wasn't there, last night? I mean, we played a little bit earlier in the last hour, Penny Mordaunt and Angela Rayner going at it again. And I'm not sure what people learned from any of this stuff. And when politicians have stopped answering questions, is there any point to even asking them anything?
Yeah, I think we have to realise that most debates don't produce a big moment. I mean, in the UK, we only started them in 2010. And of course, the first debate was the only one that's really seen a big breakthrough, because that was Nick Clegg. That was Clegg, Cameron and Brown, and so it was structured in such a way to change it from a two-horse race into a three-horse.
Yeah.
In the 15 years since, I've not seen any really big moments, to be honest, and I think last night was one of the worst I've seen.
Yeah, I think that's the trouble. As far as the way that the Labour manifesto has been perceived, a lot of people saying this morning the most important part of what's in the Labour manifesto is what's not in it, if you like. They've sort of glossed over quite a lot of things. They've kept it relatively vague. They've said no new taxes for working people. They repeat that over and over again. No new VAT, apart from on private schools. No new income tax. But people are starting to say, well, what about property tax? What about the other taxes they might raise? Fuel tax as well. What's your take on that?
I think that that's exactly spot on, and that is because Labour are basically colluding with this fantasy that taxes won't go up in the next Parliament. They have clearly been saying that it won't be income tax or VAT, but as you say, Mike, that leaves open a lot of scope for what they haven't spoken about, which is capital gains tax, which I think is going to go up, potentially some kind of raid on pensioners as well. And I think that that's the key thing we see in a lot of different media outlets today, which is Labour are going to win this election, Labour are going to win it comfortably. What are Labour's fiscal plans? And this is the only way to kind of hold them account for the next 3 weeks before we get into government and start doing it. So I think that the manifesto went off reasonably well for them. They basically, with no kind of bombs and that, it's obviously been tested very much. But I do think tax rises, whoever wins, are on the horizon. And under Labour, you tend to get more taxes typically than under the Conservatives.
Yes, and it looks as though there are some sort of secret signs in that manifesto as well to suggest that the Labour Party will have a much more woke government. You know, lately we've seen, particularly since the election's been called, we've seen the Tories kind of trying to walk away from some of the more woke policies that they've introduced, like the gender policies, and some of the stuff on you know, civil servants being able to, you know, basically tell their bosses not to just to go to hell, we're not going to do what you want us to do. But it does look rather like, if you're not a fan of wokeism, you're not going to be very happy come the July the 5th.
No, and I'm fascinated by this Race Equality Act, which they've announced, which was a part of Starmer's early phase as leader. There's a kind of a two-phase to Keir Starmer, which is one which was from 2020 to 2022, when it looked like he was going to be a two-term opposition, and then from when they thought, oh God, we're actually going to win this. And a lot of the kind of early left-wing woke stuff was junked from 2020 onwards. And so this Race Equality Act, I think, will put a mandate on employers to look into different racial disparities. And I think that that's going to be a really big, contentious, problematic piece of legislation to come. And so, yeah, I think Labour is delivering for different bits of its voter coalition and voting bloc. And I think that's the one that a lot of Tories I speak to are the ones saying this is going to be a potential vote loser for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look at another clip from the debate. These are the Tories here under Penny Mordaunt talking about Labour and the European Union.
We cannot have an economy that relies on just overseas workers. We have to also have an industrial and skills strategy when unemployment is going up in the UK, that we can train and fill our skills gaps as well.
You haven't had to do anything
Penny,
else.
you've been in power 14 years. 14 years. You haven't got one.
You don't.
You promised employment bill. We never got one. You promised to bring down net migration.
Just been here before. Thank you very much, Penny Mordaunt, Angela Rayner. I think we might have just been
the worst of all possible worlds for the EU, because they will take you back in without any of the benefits of membership.
Penny.
Sure, blimey. Somebody sent us a text in earlier when we played that and said, this reminds me why I'm quite happy to be single.
I think that clip was pretty unedifying, wasn't it? I mean,
it was.
You know, even 14 years, European Union. I mean, try and make a bit of light out of all that heat.
I mean, it's just sort of a load of shouted words, isn't it? Not even a sentence.
No, nothing coherent, cogent. And I think that, you know, look, these days we live in an age of sound bites where we're used to kind of a 30-second snippet. I mean, you at least want a bit of logic and processing behind that. I can't make head or tail of what was going on there.
No, absolutely right. So, I mean, where do the Tories go from here, James? Because, you know, Rishi Sunak must wake up every morning. I mean, I was saying this even before the election was called. He must wake up every morning thinking, crikey, I didn't think it would be this bad, you know. But, I mean, even with every step that they take, they sort of stumble. I mean, just before the last debate between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak up in Grimsby, we had the breaking news about, you know, the Craig Williams, the Tory special advisor and MP, or former MP, putting a bet on the date of the election 3 days before it was announced. You know, Rishi Sunak's had to come out, and I think today, and say that he showed a very poor error of judgment.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rishi Sunak's problems are twofold. Some of those are his own making, like the DA debacle, but others are about other people around him. And really, what can you do when your own MPs are acting in this way? I mean, it's extraordinary. I think for the Conservatives, the next thing is just getting through the next 3 weeks and trying to get a bit of momentum going. I mean, you know, someone said to me in Rishi Sunak's team that the reason he's going into Italy is he gets one last peck on the cheeks with Meloni.
Yes.
You know, the Italian Prime Minister for the last time.
And it's a very nice hotel down there, I must tell you. I mean, the G7, where they're having it, is down in Puglia. It's one of the most amazing hotels in the world. Not that I've stayed there, but just because I've looked at it and gone, wow. I mean, it's very, very exclusive. And this is why you want to be Prime Minister, presumably.
Yeah, Italy or Grimsby, that's the question, isn't it? You know, which would you be at?
Yeah, I wonder if he'll go quiet again last weekend like he did last weekend.
Well, he's going to be out there, I think, tomorrow still. So I think that basically, of the first 4 weeks of this campaign, Mike, we've seen 3 of them where he's out of action, 2 of them because of blunders, and the fourth one because of this summit.
Yeah, incredible stuff. Well, we look forward to next week, James. I'm sure we'll talk to you very soon as well. James Heale from The Spectator.